Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something that might sound a little dry at first. The intersection of political power and financial markets, in the digital age. But stick with us.
It's really amazing to see how quickly this whole area is changing.
Yeah.
I mean, just a few years ago, the idea of a former president launching his own cryptocurrency would sounded like something out of, science fiction.
You're telling me.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the Trump token launched by, who? What I find really wild is that it's not just some fringe internet thing. This token is trading at over $40.
Wow.
With a market cap of over $8 billion.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I think this is so important and why, we at Kwolfs are so interested in this. We want to make these topics accessible because it's not just about the numbers. It's about understanding, these big forces that are shaping our world. The Trump token is like a fundamental shift. Yeah. It's a potential new way that political capital can be, monetized and wielded in the digital age.
Okay, so rewind for a second.
Yeah.
Remember when Trump was super skeptical of crypto?
Yeah.
Called it thin air and all that.
Oh, yeah.
And now he's gone from NFTs to launching his own full-blown token?
Yeah.
What do you think's behind that change of heart?
Well, I think it's part of a much bigger trend. This rapid adaptation of political power to, all this new technology.
Makes sense.
What I find interesting is that this wasn't just some, sudden impulse. Remember, Trump had already dipped his toes into the crypto world with his NFT collection?
Right.
So this token launch feels more like a calculated next step.
So it's not just about jumping on the bandwagon.
No.
It's strategic.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at how the token is structured. 80% of the supply is controlled by entities affiliated with Trump.
Right.
And there's a 3-year unlocking period. That sounds pretty savvy.
It does. It really does suggest a deep understanding of financial markets and political strategy. Yeah. I think by controlling the majority of the supply, they can potentially influence the token's price and benefit from, how it goes up in value over time.
Interesting.
And that 3-year unlocking period is interesting, too.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, it creates anticipation.
Okay.
And could potentially drive up demand even more. It's like a slow burn strategy.
It's definitely got people paying attention, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The Trump token has a daily trading volume of over $21 billion.
Wow.
And here's something else I found interesting. When the token launched, both Bitcoin and Solana saw significant price surges. What do you think caused that?
That's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of what makes this whole situation so complex. I think what was happening was the market was pricing in the potential for a crypto-friendly administration.
Okay.
If Trump were to return to office,
Okay.
think of it this way. If a president's policies could directly impact the value of their own, digital asset, wouldn't that create a huge incentive for them to support, crypto-friendly legislation?
It's almost like investing in a company's stock because you believe in the CEO's vision.
Right.
But in this case, the CEO is a potential future president, and the company is, the entire U.S. economy.
Exactly.
It's blurring the lines between political power and how the market works.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon we could call the power market paradox.
Ooh.
Let's say you have some Trump tokens.
Okay.
Now, if Trump becomes president again and enacts policies that are, good for crypto, the value of your tokens could go way up.
Right.
And suddenly your financial interests are directly tied to certain political outcomes.
Yeah, that does raise some questions.
It does.
Like, what happens to impartial governance when a leader's personal wealth is so closely tied to their political decisions?
Right.
And aren't there legal problems with this kind of setup? I vaguely remember something about the foreign emoluments clause.
You're right on the money with both of those points.
Okay, good.
The Foreign Emoluments Clause says that federal officials can accept gifts or payments from foreign governments.
Right.
It was designed to prevent, undue influence from foreign powers.
Makes sense.
But it's unclear how that would apply to something like a presidential crypto token that anyone could buy, including foreign nationals.
So it's a huge legal gray area.
It is.
It's like our laws and regulations haven't caught up with this new reality where political influence can be tokenized.
That's exactly the challenge that regulators are facing right now. They're trying to figure out how to apply old frameworks to this new situation where personal wealth, political power, and digital assets are all mixed up together.
But even with all this uncertainty, it seems like major financial institutions are starting to take notice. I read that they're quietly developing their own frameworks to handle these new, what do they call them? Political financial derivatives.
Political financial derivatives?
Yeah, what do you think that tells us?
I think it tells us that even though there are huge risks and unknowns, the potential rewards are just too big to ignore.
Yeah.
These institutions are preparing for a future where political events and digital asset markets are, deeply interconnected.
And it's not just Wall Street paying attention. This is causing a global reaction. China and the EU are ramping up their own digital currency initiatives. Almost like they're trying to keep pace with America going all in on crypto.
Absolutely. The Trump token, in a way, has become a catalyst for a global competition to see who will dominate the digital financial world.
Wow.
Some analysts are calling it the great digital financial race, and it's only just begun.
So we've gone from a former president launching a crypto token to potentially reshaping the global financial landscape.
Yeah.
This is way bigger than just some quirky news story, isn't it?
It really is. The Trump token is like an early glimpse into a future where the lines between politics, finance, and technology are all blurred.
Yeah.
And to understand where we're headed, we need to understand the potential outcomes of this grand experiment.
And luckily, our sources have outlined 3 potential scenarios:
Oh, perfect.
integration, regulatory backlash, and global competition.
Okay.
Each one paints a drastically different picture of the future, and I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on those.
Yeah, let's dive into those next. Okay, so let's unpack these 3 scenarios, starting with integration.
Okay.
Imagine a world where political crypto just becomes like completely mainstream.
So instead of Bitcoin and Ethereum, we'd have Trump tokens, maybe a Biden coin, who knows what else.
Exactly.
What would that actually look like?
Well, in this scenario, traditional financial institutions like banks, investment firms, hedge funds, they all figure out how to, manage the risk that comes with these new political financial instruments. You might even see them offering products and services that are specifically designed for presidential tokens.
So like instead of betting on which tech company will have the next big IPO,
right,
you could bet on which presidential candidate will have the most successful token launch.
Exactly. Or imagine specialized funds that track a basket of presidential tokens.
Oh, wow.
Almost like a political stock index.
Interesting.
The Trump token, with its unique structure and, its early success, it could become like a blueprint for future political tokens. And it could really change the landscape of campaign finance and political influence.
It's a wild thought.
Yeah.
But if this integration scenario happens, wouldn't there be some serious concerns? Like what about market manipulation and conflicts of interest and all that?
Yeah, you're hitting on like the core tension here.
Yeah.
On one hand, you have the potential for, innovation and a new level of engagement in the political process. But on the other hand, there are some huge risks if things aren't, carefully managed.
Right.
And that brings us to our second scenario, regulatory backlash.
So in this scenario, the government steps in and says, hold on, this is getting out of control.
Right.
What kind of regulations could we see?
It could be anything from like outright bans on certain types of political tokens to stricter transparency requirements for, how those tokens are being traded.
Yeah.
There could be limits on how much of a token a candidate or their affiliates can control.
Right.
Or maybe new rules about how those tokens can be used for campaign financing.
Essentially trying to put some guardrails in place to prevent the whole system from going off the rails.
Exactly.
But what if governments are too slow to react or they can't agree on, a single approach?
Yeah.
That's where the third scenario, global competition, comes in.
Precisely. This scenario kind of zooms out and looks at the geopolitical implications.
Okay.
Imagine if the U.S. is like full steam ahead on political crypto.
Right.
But China and the EU are hesitant. That could create a huge advantage for the U.S. in the digital financial world.
So other countries would have to play catch up or risk being left behind in this new digital financial order?
That's the idea. It could even spark a global race to develop and deploy digital currencies and political tokens.
Wow.
Countries might even see it as a matter of national security, a way to protect their own financial systems and their influence, on the world stage.
It's almost like a digital arms race, but with financial tools instead of weapons.
Yeah, a very good analogy.
Yeah.
And it highlights just how connected all these issues are. What starts as like a small experiment with a presidential crypto token could ripple outwards and reshape the entire world.
There's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
We've got 3 very different potential futures.
Yeah.
Each with its own challenges and opportunity. So how do we make sense of it all?
That's the million-dollar cauldron. And
Yeah.
these scenarios aren't like mutually exclusive.
Right.
We could see elements of all three happening at the same time.
Right.
And there's always the chance of something completely unexpected happening, something we haven't even considered.
It's enough to make your head spin. But I guess that's why we do these deep dives, right?
Yeah.
To try to understand these complex and rapidly evolving issues.
Exactly. And as we go forward, it's important to remember that we're not just passive observers. We're all part of this new digital landscape, and the decisions we make will shape the outcome.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Everyone, we've been talking about this wild world of political crypto using the Trump token as our main example.
Yeah, it's a fascinating case.
It's been quite a ride, and honestly, it feels like we're only scratching the surface.
Yeah, there are definitely more questions than answers here.
Oh, sure.
We've talked about, the potential for integration, regulatory backlash, and even a global digital financial race.
Mm-hmm.
Each of those scenarios has huge implications, not just for like the financial world,
Right.
but for society as a whole.
Yeah. So for our listeners who are trying to grasp all of this, what's the one big takeaway? Like, what's the question that should keep them up at night?
I think the fundamental question is if political influence can be tokenized, traded,
Yeah.
and potentially manipulated just like any other asset,
Wow.
what does that mean for the future of democracy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are we heading towards a world where political decisions are driven more by the markets
Yeah.
than by what the people want?
That's a real possibility, and it's something we need to think about.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where wealthy individuals or corporations could buy up tons of political tokens,
Okay.
giving them way too much influence over elections and policy decisions.
It's almost like a dystopian sci-fi movie where money equals power, like literally.
Right.
But it's not just about the super rich, right?
Yeah.
Anyone could buy and sell these tokens.
Mm.
So wouldn't that mean that more people could participate in politics?
That's the other side of the coin. Political crypto could make it easier for people to get involved in politics,
Okay.
allowing them to directly support candidates and causes they care about.
Right.
And it could make campaign financing more transparent because every transaction would be recorded on the blockchain.
So it's not all bad.
Mm-hmm.
There's potential for good here,
Right.
but also lots of risks.
Yeah.
It feels like we're at a crossroads, and the choices we make now will decide what kind of future we'll have.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why these conversations are so important.
Yeah,
We need to understand how complex this new technology is and what the potential consequences are.
for sure.
Knowledge is power, especially in a world where the rules are constantly changing.
Very well said. And a big thank you to Kwolfs for partnering with us on this episode.
Yeah, they're great.
Their mission to make financial markets more accessible and engaging is more important now than ever. If you're interested in this topic and want to learn more, check out their platform.
Yeah, they do amazing work explaining these really complicated financial ideas.
Yeah. To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
We hope this episode has given you a lot to think about. And as always, stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking those tough questions. We'll see you next time.